The Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision allowed a congressional map drawn by Alabama Republicans to remain in place after a lower court had ruled it had to be redrawn due to diluting the political power of black voters. John Avalon with a reality check.
We need to talk about how black Alabama voters just got screwed by the Supreme Court. But first, we got to take a step back. Because democracy is supposed to be government of the people, by the people, for the people, as Lincoln said. But the rigged system of redistricting going on right now is designed to undercut just that. Because it's about politicians picking their people, not the opposite. And that leads directly to the division and dysfunction we see today. Now, our elected representatives have a lot more incentives to work together if there were more competitive and really representative congressional districts. But that's not happening by design. Let's dig into the data. So there are 31 states where maps have been finished and not dismissed by the courts, but just 22 congressional districts that are considered competitive, according to the Brennan Center. Now, 10 years ago, there were double that number, 44 at this point in the cycle. In 1992, there were 108 competitive districts. See a pattern? Now take a closer look at Texas, where State House Republicans drew lines to go from 12 competitive districts to just one. Yeah, they really don't want to deal with close elections. And Democrats have been getting into the action as well. Take New York, where they likely reduced the number of Republican seats from 8 to 4. Now, Republicans rightly point out that this is unfair. Democrats would control as many as 85% of the congressional seats, but don't comprise 85% of registered voters. Now, Republicans are challenging this in court, but their argument would be a lot more convincing if the GOP hadn't consistently opposed redistricting reform at the federal level. You reap what you sow. Which brings us back to Alabama. Republicans there drew up congressional maps that would secure a safe 6-seat GOP majority to just one Democratic district to accommodate the state's black voters. Now, let's do some math. African Americans make up around 27% of the population in Alabama, but will have just 14% of the congressional seats. So this caused a challenge under the Voting Rights Act, which was unanimously supported by a 3-judge federal district court panel, who ordered the state legislature to redraw the maps ASAP. But the Supreme Court just stepped in and smacked down that lower court decision by a 5-4 vote, with Chief Justice Roberts voting with the liberals on the court. This is not a little surreal, because Roberts wrote an infamous opinion saying that federal courts couldn't weigh in on state gerrymanders. But it really stings because of the brutal history of black voter suppression in the South, done through legal means. So, for example, when Alabama's state constitution was rewritten in 1901, the chairman of the state convention said it was their goal to, quote, establish white supremacy in this state, at a time when African Americans made up 45% of Alabama's population. They instituted poll taxes, literacy tests, and took other steps to disenfranchise black voters. And within 2 years, the number of registered black voters there plummeted from more than 180,000 in 1900 to just 3,000 2 years later. This practice continued until the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And that's essential to keep in mind when you listen to arguments like this from Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks, who said, quote, these liberal activist judges have tried to segregate us based on race. We've got to put the skin pigmentation issue behind us. Now, Brooks, a charter member of the Sedition Caucus, who's now running for Senate, has been bellowing about a so-called war on whites for years. So take him with a grain of salt. This is about holding on to power, pure and simple, folks. Now, there have been some victories for more balanced congressional maps in recent days, as in Ohio and North Carolina. And those should be celebrated as evidence that reform can work. But the frustration that Republicans are feeling now in New York is the same that Democrats are feeling in Texas and Alabama. And to fix the system, we need to be driven by principle, more than just partisan self-interest. Because when we have more competitive and truly representative districts, the only guaranteed winner is democracy itself. And that's your reality check.
It's good when democracy wins.
We like that.
John Avalon, thank you very much.